Hello and thanks for joining us for today's video. On our other channel, Paranormally Listed, we recently posted a video that you might find interesting. It's called 3 Tales of Holly Weird. Did you know that there's an area of Hollywood that appears to be cursed with murders and untimely deaths? Here's a short clip. In the early hours of November 16, 2010, PR publicist to the stars, Margery Hopegood, was driving home to Beverly Hills from a Hollywood movie premiere. As she turned onto North Whittier Drive, however, Jason was unknowingly driving smack dab into the twilight zone. As she turned from Sunset Boulevard, 4 gunshots rang out. Jason was hit in the chest and the back. She slumped over the steering wheel as her car drifted another half block down Whittier before it slammed into a concrete pole. When police arrived, they found Jason dead from her wounds. The victim, they said, of a carjacking or robbery gone wrong. The police didn't realize at the time, though, that they had only looked up and around the area where Jason was discovered. They would have been in line of sight to at least 5 other terrible tragedies, all within a stone's throw of Jason's crumpled Mercedes E350. Margery Jason was found at 1815 North Whittier Drive. 44 years earlier, 2 houses down at 807 North Whittier, an auto calamity of another kind occurred. If you want to watch the rest of the video, we'll have a link at the end of this video. But before we go any further, we just want to talk about our amazing sponsor, Magellan TV. Magellan TV has been a sponsor for a long time. Have you subscribed yet? Why not? With over 3,000 documentaries, it's the best streaming service for documentaries on the planet. It's also a great deal in terms of price and quality. Plus, 20 hours of new material is added every week. I love checking out their new releases section. That's where I found the documentary, Britain's Child Drug Runners. This was a really fascinating documentary. It's about children who are as young as 7 that carry drugs for gangs. For weeks at a time, they stay in depressing places called trap houses. It was a really interesting documentary, but unsurprisingly, because of its topic, it was incredibly bleak. But if you can handle the content on this channel, I think you'll find Britain's Child Drug Runners to be really interesting. If you haven't already subscribed to Magellan TV, you should check it out today because they have a great deal for criminally listed viewers. They're offering our viewers 30 days of free service. To get this amazing offer, just go to try.magellantv.com/criminallylisted. So please check out Magellan TV today because you'll find something great to watch and you'll be supporting Criminally Listed in the process. Number 3. Margery Hopegood. Margery Hopegood was born in New Zealand in 1960 to teenage parents at the Salvation Army's Bethany home. Margery's paternal grandmother was willing to raise her, but Margery's maternal grandmother was adamant that she be put up for adoption. Unable to care for the baby, the young parents gave their daughter to the Hopegoods, a family from the UK that was desperate to have a child. The Hopegoods took Margery back to England. Over the years, the family adopted 3 more children, all boys. Margery spent her life in England and eventually became a lawyer. In 1992, 32-year-old Margery traveled to New Zealand for the first time since her birth. She was encouraged to visit by Noel and Mavis Pauling, 2 corps officers who worked at the Salvation Army during Margery's birth. The Paulings were good friends with the Hopegoods and kept in touch with Margery over the years. Margery arrived in New Zealand with her birth father's phone number in her pocket, but unfortunately, she would never meet him. On the afternoon of January 10, 1992, Margery had only been in the country for 4 days. She stopped by a public bathroom in the city of Hamilton. Wayne Paco, a 29-year-old salesman, was already in the bathroom. Paco was in a deep state of depression after ending a long-term relationship. He had been in the bathroom contemplating suicide, but he ultimately decided against it. As Paco was leaving the washroom, Margery came in and accidentally blocked his exit. The 2 were strangers. According to him, she tried to grab his knife. That's when he panicked and lashed out at Margery. Hopegood attempted to fight off Paco. Stab wounds were found on her hands and fingers. But Paco stabbed her so many times that he almost severed her head. When the police arrived on scene, they found blood wall to wall in the restroom. They found the victim lying face down in the bathroom stall. By the time they arrived, Pacquiao was gone. Lots of blood was left at the scene, but no other evidence. The murder shocked the relatively peaceful country. New Zealand only had 67 murders in 1990. Hundreds of people showed up for the memorial service, paying respects to a woman they had never met. The police used media to reach out to the public for information. They received some tips, but nothing concrete. Witnesses said that they saw a man in a tie-dye shirt at the scene around the time of the murder. The police developed a list of 350 suspects. When a name was added to the list, the police asked that man for a sample of his DNA. In one case, a man fitting the description refused to give a sample of his DNA. But after some persuasion by an investigator, he gave a sample. When the police started collecting blood samples, they didn't have a sample of the killer's DNA. 3 days after the murder, they sprayed the washroom with luminol. A bloody fingerprint was found inside the washroom stall. They also discovered blood on the sink and a trail of blood leading out of the washroom. They concluded that the killer must have tried to clean himself up. He also probably cut himself during the attack and left a blood trail when he walked out of the washroom. A DNA expert determined that some of the blood in the sink and the blood trail leading out of the washroom did not belong to Margery. But it was a match to one of the 350 men who gave a sample of their DNA, 28-year-old Wayne Pacquiao. The police confronted Pacquiao with the evidence. He admitted to the murder. Wayne Pacquiao pleaded guilty to Margery Hopegood's murder. He was remorseful, but he offered no motive. In April 1992, he was sentenced to life in prison. But he only served 11 years, and he was released in 2003. Years later, Nicole Pauling, daughter of Noel and Mavis Pauling, the couple that helped Margery's parents, wrote and performed a one-woman show, She Danced on Friday. Nicola wanted to honor Margery. She actually spoke to her the day before her murder. The play was named after Margery's favorite hymn, Lord of the Dance, which was sung at her memorial service in Hamilton and her home in England. She Danced on Friday was performed in New Zealand in 2018. Number 2. Alexandra Zapp. Alexandra Zapp's family remembers her as someone who loved adventure. Whether it was leaving for kindergarten without crying or hot dogging on the ski hills, Alexandra always went for it. Alexandra had a lot of friends in school, and she breezed through her classes. She moved to Boston, Massachusetts when she was 22 and worked multiple jobs, such as selling stationery and interior decorating. She also loved volunteering at several Boston area organizations. One nonprofit, the Massachusetts Sports Partnership, appealed to her love of sports and community service. Alexandra was also a sailing enthusiast. In early 2000, she left her job as a keelboard training coordinator at the U.S. Sailing Association to travel to New Zealand for the America Cup. At some point, she moved to Newport, Rhode Island. Early on the morning of July 18, 2002, 30-year-old Alexandra Zapp was on her way from Boston to Newport after an evening charity cruise in Boston Harbor. She stopped to use the restroom on Route 24 around 4 a.m. Paul Leahy, a 39-year-old working at the rest stop's Burger King, noticed Alexandra pull up in her white Volvo, keys and wallet in hand. He was on a smoke break at the time. Leahy followed her to the bathroom and waited, clutching a 4-inch buck knife. As Alexandra exited the bathroom, Leahy pushed her back in and demanded money. As Leahy threatened her with a knife, Alexandra started screaming. When she screamed, Leahy started stabbing her. Alexandra fought for her life by trying to bite and headbutt Leahy. She also pleaded with him to stop, but he didn't listen. Leahy easily overpowered Alexandra, who was less than 100 pounds. He He repeatedly stabbed her in the neck and chest and then dragged her body to a nearby stall. In another restroom, off-duty officer Stephen O'Reilly heard the commotion. Rushing to the scene, he saw blood drops as he approached the restroom. With his gun drawn, he entered the bathroom and saw Leahy standing at the sink, covered in blood, holding Alexandra's wallet, which only contained $25. Alexandra was laying face down, covered in blood, in one of the stalls. O'Reilly asked Leahy what happened. Leahy only responded with, "I lost it. I lost it." Leahy was arrested at the rest stop. Alexandra Zapp was pronounced dead at Morton Hospital an hour later. Paul Leahy was held without bail and charged with murder, kidnapping, armed robbery, armed assault, and intent to rob. Leahy's crime brought Massachusetts' treatment of violent sexual offenders into focus. Leahy had a history of violent sex crimes that spanned decades. Beginning in 1984, he was convicted of breaking into the home of a 13-year-old girl, forcing her into the bathroom at knife point, and assaulting her. After a short stint in prison, Leahy struck again. In 1987, he forced a woman into the back of a pizza parlor and raped her. He served 13 years in prison and was released in 2000. Later that year, he was charged again, this time for harassing a teenager and asking her to perform oral sex on him. For that crime, he only served 6 months in a county jail. Altogether, Leahy had racked up 24 convictions. After his last conviction, he was hired at the Route 24 Burger King. Before the killing, prosecutors were trying to classify Leahy as a repeat offender under the state's dangerous person law. The law would seek a civil commitment if offenders were likely to reoffend and needed treatment. Local police and area residents would also be notified of a registered sex offender in the area. Leahy's name was in a backlog of 18,000. When Alexandra Zapp was murdered, the board had only classified 1,000 names. Paul Leahy's trial started on September 22, 2003. He pleaded not guilty. The prosecution had a strong case. Leahy was found in the bathroom by a police officer with a barely alive victim holding her wallet, and he was covered in her blood. Leahy's defense was that he did stab Alexandra, but he did not intend to kill her. The trial lasted 3 days, then the jury deliberated for just over 2 hours. 40-year-old Paul Leahy was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole. Alexandra Zapp's parents were upset that Leahy had been out on the streets despite being a habitual sexual offender. They believed he would have raped her had she not fought back. 60-year-old Paul Leahy is serving his sentence at the Old Colony Correctional Center in Bridgewater, Massachusetts. Number 1. Matthew Cecchi. Matthew Cecchi loved building Lego. The 9-year-old was known to build intricate creations that were knocked over by his 3-year-old brother, Nick. Matthew also loved baseball. The Little Leaguers coach fondly remembers Matthew hitting his team's first and only home run in the 1998 season. He was so excited he almost passed the kid on the base in front of him, his coach Jonathan Kearney said. Matthew was also a talented student. He received straight A's in his 3rd grade class at Stanford Elementary Public School. Matthew talked about becoming an engineer, a cartoonist, or an architect when he grew up. In November 1998, Matthew, his mother, and his 3-year-old brother traveled to Oceanside in San Diego County, California, to attend a family reunion held at a paid camping site. On the afternoon of November 14, 1998, Matthew's aunt escorted the boy to a cinder block restroom on the campground. He didn't want to go into the women's washroom, so she waited outside while he went into the men's. She saw a young man enter the washroom. A short time later, the young man walked out of the washroom and muttered, "What's going on?" Matthew's aunt had a bad feeling and shouted to her nephew. When he didn't answer, she rushed into the restroom. That's when she saw 9-year-old Matthew bleeding on the floor. His throat was slit ear to ear, and he had 5 stab wounds in his back. Matthew's aunt called out to family members, and they frantically tried to save the boy. His mother, Sharon, held him, trying to comfort her son before paramedics arrived. Unfortunately, Matthew died of his injuries at the scene. The murder shocked the family and angered the community. Matthew's father, who was battling leukemia and did not attend the reunion, was notified of his son's death by a family member. 2 days later, Los Angeles police arrested a man for robbing and stabbing a 40-year-old woman who was walking to work. Witnesses had tackled the man and held him down until the police arrived. The woman was taken to the hospital and survived her wounds. The attacker was identified as 20-year-old Brandon Wilson, a transient from St. Croix, Wisconsin, with prior drug arrests. While in custody, Wilson said things to the police that made them think he killed Matthew Cecchi. He said some things that only the killer would have known. An expert examined the knife used to stab the woman and determined it was the same knife that killed Matthew. Matthew's aunt also identified Wilson as the man who entered and left the washroom when Matthew was killed. At a hearing, Wilson admitted to the murder but pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. A judge ordered Wilson to be evaluated to determine if he should stand trial. Wilson admitted to taking LSD while camping in the Anza Borrego Desert. That's when he heard God tell him to kill people for him. During his arraignment, Wilson shouted, "I did it. I'm guilty. I want to talk to myself. I did it. I killed him. I killed the little boy." He was deemed fit to stand trial. During his 1999 trial, Wilson admitted that he passed up 2 other victims, but he targeted the 9-year-old because his soul was innocent. Prosecutors argued for the death penalty. They argued that the severe crimes of murder by ambush and murder by torture warranted such a penalty. They also pointed out Wilson had no documented history of mental illness. A court-appointed psychiatrist testified that Wilson suffers from a grandiose type of delusional disorder, but he knew right from wrong. The prosecution showed the jury a video recording of Wilson confessing to the murder, and he appears to be happy when he talks about murdering the boy. A coroner testified that Matthew was awake and aware of what was happening to him as he lay dying. Wilson had snuck up behind him at the urinal, pulled his head back, and slit his throat. He then stabbed him 5 times in the back. Wilson's defense team tried to save him from the death penalty, hoping for life without parole instead. On November 4th, 1999, Wilson was found guilty of first-degree murder with special circumstances. At his sentencing hearing, Wilson told jurors he had no remorse whatsoever for his crimes and asked for the death penalty. "I would do it again in a second if I had a second chance," Wilson said on the stand. "I've explained to you my position here. My whole purpose in life is to help destroy your society. You people are here as representatives of that society. As such, you should do everything in your power to rid the world of me. Execute me, impose the death penalty, or I'll kill again." Brandon Wilson got his wish and he was sentenced to death. Matthew Cecchi's murder devastated his family beyond repair. His parents divorced shortly after the murder. In her victim impact statement, Matthew's mother, Sharon Cecchi, read letters from Matthew's classmates and spoke about the pain and loneliness of her surviving son. Matthew's father, Lou Cecchi Jr., was still battling cancer and was too weak to attend the proceedings. In a statement read by a friend, Lou called Wilson a punk and a freak. "Divorce, cancer, and murder all in 1 year," Lou wrote. "I feel like an actor in a horror movie." Lou Cecchi Jr. died soon after from cancer. Brandon Wilson, the murderer who literally asked for the death penalty, would never get his wish. He hanged himself in his San Quentin prison cell on November 17, 2011, after serving 12 years on death row. He was 33 years old. Matthew Cecchi's murder brought change for the protection of children. The Matthew Cecchi Public Safety Act requires public parks in San Diego to have family washrooms, and all new buildings and renovations are also required to have family washrooms in their plans. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Please don't forget to check out our new channel, Paranormally Listed. There's a link on the screen now, and there's a link in the description box below this video. Well, that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.